The day after the 10th wedding date, Callum reached over me and kissed his adopted sister. He gave a scarlet rose to Freya as she walked off the stage. "My princess, I am only your flower protector in this life." I stood quietly outside the booing crowd, then turned around and left resolutely. I finally gave up on this marriage that I had been engaged to for 5 years. Callum with the wedding invitation and jade bracelet that I had written at the engagement party 5 years ago. "Let's break off the engagement." There was no emotion in my tone. Callum stared at me for a long time with those beautiful eyes, then he slowly leaned back on the sofa and squinted at me. "Aria, are you kidding me?" I shook my head. "I'm serious." As if to confirm that this was the result of my own thinking, I added, "It took me many years to make this decision." The last rays of sunlight in the sky shone on the sofa, making Callum's face look even gloomier. After a while, he nodded, stood up and said indifferently, "It's up to you. I have something else to do. You can take the jade bracelet that was yours back then." I didn't say anything, walked past him into the study, and saw the old wedding invitation. I picked up the jade bracelet that I exchanged that year, took a deep breath, and slowly stood up. "Callum and I have been together for 10 years. We were going to get married 5 years ago, but the wedding date was postponed again and again because of Freya's appearance. Over the past 5 years, I have wanted to end this relationship countless times, and regretted it countless times, but this time, it won't happen. From today on, Callum and I have nothing to do with each other anymore." After walking out of the study, I was surprised to see Callum, who had already gone out. He stood quietly in the living room, as if waiting for me. I walked over, wanting to ignore him and leave. Callum stopped me and frowned at me. "Jiao Jiao, if this is about what happened today, then you misunderstood." I listened to his righteous tone without looking up. Did I misunderstand? This morning he promised Freya that he would be her personal protector. Last time, he used his status to put pressure on Freya and helped her snatch my opportunity to perform on stage. The last time, he kissed Freya in front of me so that Freya could win the game. Are these all misunderstandings? Faced with Callum's condescending request for peace, for the first time, I did not respond to him. Over the years, I was the one who compromised and sought reconciliation every time. Even every time we had a fight, as long as he took the initiative to speak, I would come back obediently. But never again. "We're done." Freya backstage, she stood there and chatted with the new junior sisters. Her posture was very elegant. Freya saw me passing by, stretched out her hand to stop me with a provocative look. In the past, I would have listened to Callum, give her some room, say hello nicely, or take a detour. But now, I slapped her slender arm. Freya probably didn't expect me to do this. She pulled back her arm in pain, walked over and pushed me hard, saying angrily, "Aria, what are you crazy about? You don't know who you are in front of, do you?" I steadied myself and said calmly, "I know. The eldest daughter of the Liu family, the darling of our dance troupe. 5 years ago, when Callum went to support the orphanage, he met Freya, who was visiting the orphanage. Because the company needed fame at that time, Callum directly recognized Freya as his sister and brought her home, but somehow this fame turned into Callum's unconditional pampering. Later, our wedding was postponed again and again. Freya's matter became Callum's top priority. The first time Callum stood me up for Freya, it seemed to be my birthday. The family driver whispered to me that Callum was going to propose to me that day. Callum is straight. I don't want to open the ticket to the second half of my life in an unromantic occasion, so that day I took the initiative to book the best seat at the Sunset restaurant. I sat in the center of the beautiful and romantic restaurant, enjoying the flowers and applause, and cutting the exquisite little cake with a Western knife in my hand, a ring, exposed in the sweet air. I was ecstatic, but the next second, Freya arrived at the scene. "Brother, I seem to have a fever," seeing Freya. Callum stopped proposing without hesitation and walked towards Freya. My smile stopped abruptly. The phrase "what are you doing?" When I met his cold eyes, I thought, "Can we take her to the hospital together later?" He frowned and stared at the ring as if he was thinking about something, but he still said to me mercilessly, "Jiao Jiao, be sensible. Xiaolu is still young. What if she has a fever and has sequelae? Maybe women's sixth sense is particularly accurate." That day, I watched him protecting Freya as he left. and suddenly I felt that Callum didn't belong to me, but no matter how strong my premonition was, I couldn't stop myself from sinking again and again. My heart beats again and again, and I go through fire and water for love again and again. Callum stood me up for Freya. There seem to be so many that I can't even remember them all. At this moment, Freya's sharp voice cut through the entire floor. Knowing that you still dare. I came back to my senses and calmly interrupted her. What does it have to do with me? In the past, Callum not only protected her, but also made me give in to her. My unconditional obedience only emboldened Freya. She has snatched away my opportunities to perform on stage and my dance costumes more than once. She respects her teacher, even, steal my fiancé, she stole it before, and I don't want to care about it anymore. Now I don't want to give in to her anymore. Callum and I have called off our engagement. She looked at me in amazement, as if she didn't understand. What? I saw disbelief and a hint of subtle surprise in her eyes. After all, Callum's family is rich and powerful, he is handsome, and he owns a listed company, so his future is limitless. How could anyone be stupid enough to want to leave him? But I am willing to exchange this stupidity for a true love. Freya saw the silence and calm that followed, seeing that I didn't seem to be faking it. She smiled happily. Really, you really left him? I wasn't hurt by the joy in her eyes. I stared at her and spoke calmly again. Well, I'm done with him. As for you, you don't have to just call him brother. As soon as I finished speaking, Freya immediately changed her dance costume, threw it to the junior sister next to her, and left in a hurry. I know she went to find Callum. The junior sisters looked at me cautiously. Senior sister, are you okay? I shook my head and tried my best to force a smile. I'm fine. I practiced in the quiet practice room for the whole morning. When I was walking back to the backstage, sweating and panting, the girl I was dating at the next table came up to me and handed me a glass of water. I took it gratefully, thanked her, and saw her mumbling while scrolling through her phone. Freya is in love. This guy looks familiar. I was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously took out my phone from my pocket and opened Freya's circle of friends. She posted a photo of her and Callum holding hands in an orphanage. Caption: You and I, after so many years, are finally side by side. It was sent at 12:07, December 7th, the day they met. I pursed my lips and looked at the sweat on my head. Suddenly not wanting to wipe it off, Callum celebrating my birthday in a doll costume was prominently displayed on my desk. I reached out and took apart the photo frame without hesitation, stood up, walked to the shredder, and put the photo in. The shredder slowly shredded the photo, completely gone, without a trace. I walked back to my seat, picked up the water and drank it in big gulps. It was not until the evening that I dragged my exhausted body out of the dance troupe. The cell phone rang with a familiar ringtone. I hesitated for half a minute and took out my cell phone from my pocket. A feeling of loss and grievance came over me. Hey, Jiao, when did you and Mom, were breaking off the engagement? I interrupted her. After my mother heard what I had to say, she said, What are you thinking about? You are almost 30 years old, and you still dare to break off the engagement. Who would marry you if you break off the engagement now? Besides, this marriage was arranged by your Aunt Lou and I. Now she has Alzheimer's disease, but we can't do something that goes against our promise. You must go and explain it to your aunt. Go and say it yourself. I hung up the phone and walked down the street alone. There are thousands of lights in this city, but not a single light is on for me. I think I will always be alone. The bell rang again. I tilted my head and swiped the screen. Hello, teacher. The teacher's words rang in my ears. Are you going to the advanced training class in Italy? If you refuse again, Freya will snatch it away. I'll go, teacher, don't worry. I will not give her the opportunity the dance troupe gave me in the future. The teacher kept nagging me and told me earnestly that I had finally come to terms with it. I smiled bitterly. I'm not letting go of it at all. I just understand that I shouldn't give up what belongs to me. I shouldn't force something that doesn't belong to me. The next day, I took a day off and wanted to sleep in. I was woken up by the ringing of the phone early in the morning. Callum scolded coldly on the other end of the phone. Are you crazy? Are you really going to ask your family to break up the engagement? Aria, you are 30 years old. You are not a 20-year-old girl like Freya. Can you think clearly before doing anything? My still unclear mind gradually became clear after he shouted at me, "Callum, you like Freya, right?" There was no response from the other end of the phone for a long time. After a long while, he seemed to have made a decision and responded, "Arya, I only like Freya as a younger sister. You and I are the ones who should get married." I stared at the ceiling and suddenly felt that this man whom I had loved for 10 years was such a coward. "Callum, the first time you left me for Freya was on my birthday. That was the day you decided to marry me, and you also decided to leave me for her. The second time you ignored my feelings for Freya was when you blocked her drink at our dance troupe party. You kissed her to help her win the competition and told me it was just a game, ignored me for the third time because of Freya. You knew that I dreamed of being on the stage, and you knew that this opportunity was mine, but you still went against your conscience and snatched the opportunity for Freya as an investor." Every time I said it, my eyes got redder. "Callum, you like her and you're sorry for me. Do you want me to continue?" There was a beep on the phone and then the call was hung up. Callum couldn't even say an apology. This man is such a coward. Not long after the call, Callum passed away. He went to Hebby Province to discuss cooperation, and Freya went with him. I didn't want to follow him, but Freya kept posting on her moments. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I clicked to block it. Dance company, home, my life began to return to normal. In the past, for Callum, I would take time out of my busy schedule to prepare a loving lunch for him. After making and packing it, I ran a long way to the company, only to receive a few casual comments that the takeout was not as delicious as the one ordered by Freya. The time I save now is enough for me to get many peaceful nights of sleep. I no longer have to worry about falling asleep in the dance troupe, drinking strong and bitter black coffee, or lying on a hard bench to catch up on my sleep. A week later, Callum returned. He was wearing a black plaid coat, standing straight, with his hands in his pockets, and appeared at the door of the dance troupe, blocking my way. "Arya, let's talk." Callum took me to the Sunset restaurant where he proposed to me. It was still in the very center, with flowers, applause, cello music, and a peaceful and elegant atmosphere. He handed the cut cake to me and said in a hoarse voice, "I have thought carefully about what you said that day. I can change it. I will stand by your side from now on." I put the cake in my mouth and didn't reply. In the past, I didn't distinguish the relationship between my family and my lover, my sister and my fiancé. "I will change. Jiao Jiao, can you give me a chance?" To be honest, it would be a lie to say that I felt no emotion at all, so when I met his sincere gaze and saw the diamond ring in the cake, my heart was moved again. I slowly said, "Okay." Callum's tense expression instantly relaxed. But just as he was about to put the ring on my finger, the familiar ringtone of a cell phone rang in my ears. Callum glanced at me subconsciously, then slowly put the phone across my body and lowered the brightness of the phone. I saw all these little movements. The owner of the phone is self-evident, because I know that this is the exclusive ringtone he set for Freya. Callum gave me a guilty look. I lowered my head and spit out the cake, Freya's call in front of me. He would look a little guilty towards me. I would pretend to be generous and tell him it was okay. Callum stepped on my magnanimity with a clear conscience and hovered on the edge of the bottom line. This time, he still did the same. Let me pick up the phone. Jiao Jiao. Xiaolu must have called me because something big happened. I neither agreed nor refused. Freya's voice still came from the other end of the phone. "Brother, I feel dizzy. I came to the bar and was forced to drink a lot of alcohol. What should I do? I'm so scared." I saw a flash of urgency in Callum's eyes. As expected, he said to the other end of the phone, "Don't be afraid, I'll be there right away." Callum hung up the phone, trying to prove to me with assurances that everything he had just said to me was true and he would do it. He said, "Jiao Jiao, don't worry, this is the last time I will take care of her. From now on, I will explain everything to her." I didn't look at him, but looked down at the big pigeon egg. Not far away, a show started in the restaurant. Countless fireworks suddenly bloomed in the night sky. Every couple in the restaurant smiled a little more. Just me, alone. Whether it was the proposal 5 years ago or the reconciliation 5 years later, I was left here alone. I received a WeChat message on my phone. I opened it and saw Freya's smug face between the lines. "Arya, he chose me after all." In the video she sent me, Callum stood in front of her and beat up those who forced her to drink. Freya said to me when we were out with the dance troupe in the afternoon, "He will apologize to you tonight. But don't worry, he will still stand on my side, he will only choose me." To be honest, when Callum apologized to me just now, I was really shaken. I thought at the time, if he could really do it, I would give him one last chance. Unfortunately, he still couldn't do it. 2 days later, I went to apply for a visa to go abroad. After completing the formalities, I took the jade bracelet to the nursing home to see Aunt Lou. I came here several times. The first few times, Aunt Lou was unconscious and didn't recognize me. Fortunately, this time she regained consciousness and called me Xiao Jiao Jiao. I told her about recent events and the purpose of my visit. Aunt Lou touched the jade bracelet and was silent for a long time. She raised her head, looking a little sad. "When you were little, you always played together. Ahuai always told me that he wanted to marry you. Later, he begged me to ask your mother to arrange the marriage. I thought this relationship would blossom and bear fruit for you, but I didn't expect that it would delay you for so many years. I am sorry for you, Ahuai." "I'm sorry too." My eyes reddened and I shook my head. "Callum taught me what love feels like and that love cannot be forced. Auntie, this is my choice." Aunt Lou tore up the wedding invitation, returned the jade bracelet to me, and said, "Jiao Jiao, I wish you happiness in the future." About 2 weeks later, I successfully got the visa, board your flight to Italy. I still wore that jade bracelet. The moment the plane door closed, I couldn't help but raise my phone to capture the sunset at this moment. The camera was pointed at the window, but an incredible figure was seen, Callum. The next second, the flight attendant informed us that the weather had changed and asked us to return to the waiting hall to wait. The passengers in the cabin looked at the clear sky and couldn't help but complain and question. "You're telling me you can't fly in this weather? No way. Did you make a mistake in the test?" I was lucky enough to be reunited with my wife in time. What bad luck. Callum, under the guidance of the flight attendant, a rare trace of panic appeared on his noble face. He opened his arms and hugged me fiercely, and said slowly, "Why didn't you tell me that you were going to Italy to study?" I pushed him away, looked at the passengers staring at me in confusion, and said expressionlessly, "You shouldn't have come." Callum grabbed my hand and placed the ring I hadn't worn that day in my palm. "Jiao Jiao, I'm here to marry you. Can we get married now?" I looked at the ring in my hand and Callum, whose eyes were full of regret, and my heart was calm. "Callum, I almost agreed to it that night, but you couldn't even apologize to me and do what you promised yourself, and you left me again." At that moment, I really gave up. We have been together for 10 years. I gave you my most brilliant youth and girlhood, but you mocked me for being too big. But you forgot that when I was with you, I was less than 20 years old. Whether you like youth or are really moved, I have completely let you go, I said, put the ring in his hand, and turned to leave. I used to wait for him. This time, let me go first. An hour later, I was back on board. The tarmac outside the window was empty. The person who played the most important role in the story eventually disappeared in the vast crowd. The passengers in the first-class cabin gave me strange looks, then turned their heads away and muttered silently, "This is a rich man hijacking a plane in pursuit of love." I closed my eyes and ignored it. After getting off the plane, I breathed in the fresh air and a sense of freedom came over me. The suitcase hit a man head-on and scattered all over the floor. I felt deeply sorry and decided to treat him to a meal. In the restaurant, he told me his name was Jiu Shiu. He was dressed in black satin and had dignified manners. Before leaving, he dropped me off at the downstairs of the apartment. The course load for further studies in Italy was very tight, and I was learning the language while keeping up with the dance progress. In all my business, I never once thought of Callum. The next time I saw him was on Christmas Day. Christmas is not far from the Chinese New Year in China. Mom called and Callum appeared in the video. Mom said, "Ahuai said he came to see us for you." I greeted him through the screen without saying anything. Callum stared at me for several seconds and slowly said, "How are you doing?" I was silent for 2 seconds, thinking back on my experiences this year, then nodded with a smile, "Very good." After hanging up the phone, I picked up the ingredients I had just bought from the supermarket and put them in the refrigerator. There was a knock on the door. Jiu Shiu was carrying a lot of bags. and a small area of his shoulder was soaked by the heavy snow outside. He exhaled a breath of hot air and smiled. Christmas in foreign countries is considered the New Year. It's not too much for us to celebrate the New Year together, right? I turned sideways and let him in. He walked into the kitchen with familiarity, unloaded the bags and poured himself some water. If there was anything unexpected in Italy this year, Giu Shiu is one of them. We parted downstairs that day and met again on the way to the dance troupe. He also happened to live very close to my home. We often made plans to have dinner together and go home together. He taught me Italian and I treated him to dinner. After a few interactions, we gradually became familiar with each other. Giu Shiu expressed his feelings to me. It was a leisurely restaurant different from the Sunset restaurant. The singer sang a romantic German love song, and waiters appeared holding balloons and cakes. Giu Shiu knelt on one knee holding the necklace, surrounded by cheers of blessings from the crowd. His love is passionate and blatant. The words "I like you" and "I want to marry you." It brought tears to my eyes. I took the balloon and ate the cake, but I didn't accept the necklace. Giu Shiu was puzzled and kept asking me questions for more than a month. I calmly told him about my past 10 years with Callum. Finally, I said, "You have been developing in Italy for so many years. I will return to China next year. I won't stay for you, and you won't give up everything here for me. If there is no future for us, let's just be friends." It seemed like Giu Shiu had listened to my words and didn't pursue me relentlessly. Instead, he acted like a friend, saying that it was too lonely to eat alone and often came to my house to cook. In the end, I still didn't tell Giu Shiu on the day I returned to China, but I unexpectedly saw him on the plane. He smiled at me and said, "Maybe it would be interesting to live in a different place." The string in my heart, which had not been moved for a long time, began to ripple. What was even more surprising was that I saw Callum, who came to pick me up on the tarmac. He walked towards me as if nothing had happened, and gently reached out his hand to touch the hair on my forehead. But this time, he was stopped in mid-air by a hand. Giu Shiu's tall figure loomed over me, and he said in a domineering tone, "How dare you pick up my girlfriend on the tarmac?" Callum had a gloomy face, and as if he couldn't accept this fact, he gritted his teeth and asked me, "Jiao Jiao, is what he said true?" While he was waiting for my answer, he clenched his fists again and again. I stood in front of Giu Shiu and said firmly, "Yes." A sound. Callum's eyes were red. He said nothing, and turned away. I looked at his back and sighed that time is really a magical thing. Looking at his back, I didn't feel anything at all. There was a sound of warm breath against my neck. Giu Shiu spoke in a clear voice with a different kind of emotion. "For the first time, I have to rely on my ex-boyfriend to get a status. Is he so good-looking that you can't help staring at him?" I punched him in anger and said, "It's just a feeling." The next day, I stood at the door of the dance troupe. The sun is shining and the sky is endless. The teacher and a group of junior sisters stood at the door to greet me. After a long round of greetings, I returned to the familiar backstage. From a distance, I can see the spot on my desk where Callum's framed photo used to be. There is a bouquet of flowers. On the card were Giu Shiu's powerful and fluent handwriting, "All the best." The junior sister next to him seemed to have sensed something and showed a curious expression. "Oh, something has happened just after returning to China." I smiled and put the card in the drawer. "Meet someone from abroad." The junior sister covered her mouth and said exaggeratedly, "Follow you back home." I nodded, and just as my colleague was about to gossip, someone walked in with a bouquet of red roses. "Ms. Chen, someone sent flowers." I frowned and was about to refuse, but my junior sister held my hand and said mysteriously, "Freya had an accident while performing on stage last week and was fired. That Mr. Liu didn't protect her." I pulled her hand away, took a look at the red rose, and didn't take it. Throw it away. After the person who sent the flowers left, the good gossip atmosphere was destroyed. I changed my clothes and practiced dancing seriously. In the evening, Callum stood next to the trash can at the entrance of the dance troupe, playing with the bouquet of red roses. When I passed by, he stopped me and said in a gentle and cautious tone, "To celebrate your return home, how about having dinner together?" I shook my head and refused. "No, my boyfriend will take me there." Callum acted like he didn't understand and held my hand tightly, refusing to let go. "Jiao Jiao, I have already cut off contact with Freya, and I have been reflecting and repenting these days. Can't you give me another chance? I pushed his hand away and said impatiently, I don't like you anymore. Don't bother me. My phrase entangled, it stung Callum. He asked me in disbelief, Aria, you said I was pestering you. I stared at him and said word by word with certainty, yes. You are pestering me, Callum. I've thought of you occasionally over the past 2 years, and the 10 years we've been together. How did I persist in the 5 years that followed when you and Freya were still together? Until one day, I got the answer. You have a distinguished family background and a proud personality, but you are the only one willing to bow your head for me and apologize to me after making a mistake. Your preference gives me a great sense of security. But the preference you give me is all for her. When I said this, I started to turn anxious. I ruthlessly tore through his little thoughts and his fig leaf. The person you prefer is not me. But Freya, you don't want to admit that you've fallen in love with someone else. And you don't want to admit that you've changed your mind in a relationship. Callum, you only think about yourself, but you let 2 women waste their energy and youth on you. You are so selfish. Let me guess. You didn't vouch for Freya because you were afraid that I would embarrass her after returning to the dance troupe, right? Callum's face turned pale. Finally, I said, by the way, it's not me who likes red roses, it's Freya. After saying that, I turned around and left without looking back. Not far away, Jiu Shiu stood under the streetlight, standing out from the crowd. I walked over and took his hand, shook off my bad mood and said with a smile, let's go. In the car, he fastened my seatbelt, handed me the phone, and returned to the driver's seat. I'm not familiar with the country. Here are a few restaurants I've made a guide for. You can choose from them. Jiu Shiu and I have similar taste buds, and I have never been disappointed with any of the restaurants he took me to when I was abroad. On the screen, he selected 5 restaurants. I didn't look at the others and pointed to the number 1 ranked Sunset restaurant and said, this one, I've been there many times. It tastes good. In the restaurant, I skillfully ordered dishes that I had eaten in the past and said to Jiu Shiu with a smile, these are all delicious. This is my first meal back home. I wish you good luck in finding a job. The same luxurious and high-end environment, the same atmosphere and violin playing. I thought I would never step into this restaurant again, but when I stepped into it again 2 years later, I had completely different feelings. This time, I don't seem so lonely. Jiu Shiu raised his glass and clinked it with mine. The night was bright and the chandelier shone on his delicate face, making him look particularly charming. I promised to celebrate with you today. My meal, Jiao Jiao. My parents will be back next week. Would you like to go with me to meet them? I smiled and agreed. Okay. To Callum that day, I blocked all his contact information, but he still called me from an unfamiliar number on the weekend. My mother is sick and all she talks about is you. I hope you can come and see her. I couldn't bear it, but I didn't agree and remained vague. After hanging up the phone, I immediately took a taxi to the nursing home. Aunt Lou was indeed very ill. Probably because she was old, and she didn't recognize me at all. I took off the jade bracelet, put it in her hand, and said softly, I am Jiao Jiao, I am here to see you. Although Aunt Lou was confused, she recognized the jade pendant and kept talking to me. Callum came in and saw me, and the joy in his eyes was hard to ignore. I stayed with Aunt Lou until the evening and just coaxed her to sleep. Jiu Shiu sent a message saying he would come to pick me up. I stood up and ignored Callum. Walking out the door, he stopped me at the door and handed me the jade bracelet that had fallen. Then I remembered that I had just used the jade bracelet to coax Aunt Lou and it fell into her hands. I took the bracelet and said thank you. Callum took a step forward towards me, a hint of pain in his eyes. You still have the jade bracelet that we used for our engagement. Why won't you forgive me? A message popped up on my phone saying that Jiu Shiu had arrived. And a hint of impatience flashed in my eyes. Callum, there's no point in getting entangled. I thought that after saying this, Callum would tactfully move aside, but he pressed on, looking at me with bloodshot eyes. I don't believe it. If you really forgot about me, you wouldn't have kept the jade bracelet. You just want to make me angry, right? I slapped him mercilessly and pushed him away. Callum's eyes, grievance, confusion, uneasiness, and regret, I saw it all. But I still said clearly and solemnly, I kept it because of my aunt. It has nothing to do with you. I say it again, Callum, we are over a long time ago. Do you understand? Callum's pupils shrank slightly. But he wasn't looking at me. He rushed towards me and yelled, "Watch out." I turned my head back reflexively, my pupils dilated. A woman rushed out from the next room and pushed me down the stairs. I didn't have time to dodge and subconsciously closed my eyes. I was held in his arms and spun around, and the familiar scent of grass and trees came towards me. I opened my eyes and Callum was underneath me, having broken his leg. The nurse at the nursing home frantically dialed 120. I was speechless, my breath caught in my throat. In the hospital, I stood by Callum's bed with a cold face. He lay on the bed, his pale lips forced into a smile. "Don't be angry, I just don't want you to get hurt." The breath that was stuck in my throat became even more choked. And I said unhappily, "Thank you for saving me. I will pay for the medical expenses and hire a nurse to take care of you." He was silent for a while, then he touched his injured leg and looked at me pitifully. "Can you take care of me?" I shook my head and refused, and walked out of the ward. Shiu stood outside the door, playing with the cufflinks on his hand. When he saw me coming out, he teased me. "I thought you would agree to him out of consideration for our past relationship." I walked forward expressionlessly and coldly. "I followed you from the sanatorium to the ward door in a hurry, but you were not in a hurry to steal your girl." Shiu caught up with me, took out a piece of chocolate from his pocket and stuffed it into my hand. "I always respect your business. Your thoughts are your thoughts. My actions are my actions. If you really agree to him today, I will respect your decision," I said unhappily. "What if he takes this opportunity to act pitiful and try to win me back?" Shiu smiled confidently. "You won't." I was surprised and turned my head from the passenger seat to look at him. Shiu's bony hands gripped the steering wheel and drew a beautiful arc. "If you were not firm in your stance, I should have chased you in Italy. Why would I have to follow you back home?" I was so happy and my mood became brighter. Callum saved me. Yes, he is indecisive in the relationship, which is a disaster. I originally hated him and resented him, but now that he saved me this time, let's just consider it even. Shiu's hand that was not holding the steering wheel placed on my fingertips, carefully examining them. "Don't forget to meet my parents on the weekend." I nodded happily. I had just left the house on the weekend when the nurse called me in an anxious tone. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Liu has a fever and can't eat anything. We can't persuade him." I frowned and was silent for 2 seconds before I said, "Go find a doctor. The doctor won't let him die in the hospital." Shiu burst into laughter at an inappropriate time. I glared at him and hung up the phone. Soon, we drove to a low-key and luxurious manor. I stared at the palace-like villa in front of me for 2 seconds. "Why didn't you tell me that your family is so rich?" Shiu was stunned for a moment and laughed. "I thought you knew that my last name is Gu." Then I remembered that the richest man in this city was named Gu. I walked into the villa with a nervous mood, but the moment I saw Shiu's mother, I suddenly felt enlightened. His mother is very low-key. She pulled me aside to chat as soon as we met. A fine warm jade bracelet lies quietly in the palm of my hand. "These are all the things we have at home. Keep them for now. I will prepare better things for you on the day of your engagement." I enjoyed this meal very much. The only downside was that when I was using the toilet, I received a call from the nurse, and Callum asked me to go see him one last time. I was afraid that he would do something weird again, so I agreed. After dinner, I asked Shiu to take me to the hospital. Before getting off the car, he took my hand and pulled me into his arms. He held me down and kissed me for a long time until his lips were peeling. "Don't promise him anything." I smelled the uneasiness in his tone and pecked him on the lips affectionately. "No." Callum in the hospital, waiting for him to speak. He said nothing, just looked at me and cried silently. I still didn't say anything and just sat there waiting for him to finish crying. Callum was probably tired of crying, and asked me with red eyes, "Is there really no chance for us?" "I regret it, Jiao Jiao. I really regret it. I have been thinking a lot these days. You have always been the one I love." Freya was just impulsive. I interrupted him and said coldly, "I don't want to hear your nonsense. I have a boyfriend now, our relationship is stable, and we are getting married soon. You said this was the last time we would meet, so I came here." if you have something to say, just say it all at once. As for the rest, forget it, never mind. This word is particularly hurtful. Callum looked at me impatiently, his eyes reddened, he choked up his throat and blurted out with a breath held tight. I don't believe you still have our jade bracelets. I sighed, took off the jade bracelet, and looked at it on my hand for a long time. Callum looked at me with strong anticipation in his eyes. I took a deep breath and smashed the jade bracelet to the ground. Torn apart, Callum roared. Are you crazy? I said calmly. If it gives you hope that this relationship can still be repaired, then I would rather smash it. Callum, I will never forget you. But I hope you won't bother me anymore. You've delayed me for 10 years. Now it's time to let me go. I stood up and walked out of the ward. Callum screamed behind him. Aria, you are mine. Why should I let you go? Come back. I didn't even look back. Closed the door and left. Standing at the door of the ward was a person who surprised me. Freya. We sat down in a cafe opposite the hospital. She looked haggard, holding a coffee cup and looking down at herself. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I stayed with Callum for 5 years and got nothing in the end. Aria, do you think I deserve this? I didn't say anything and looked out the window. A couple walking their dog are playing with their dog. I smiled and said, do you think they will keep the dog if they break up? Freya looked unhappy, thinking I was hinting at something. I didn't explain. I took a sip of coffee and asked, how are you doing? On her ugly face, she managed to utter a few words. Not very good. It can be said to be very poor. Callum used to protect me, and I thought I had a talent for dancing, but he stopped protecting me, and I realized that my level was not even qualified to be a teacher. The couple at the door had already walked away. Only Jiyu Shiyu's car was parked in front of the coffee shop. I finished my cup of coffee and spoke directly. Freya, you are young and you are attracted to older, handsome and attractive men. I don't blame you, but if you are sober and sensible, you should behave yourself in the future. Freya looked at me with tears in her eyes. I stood up and left the cafe, opening Jiyu Shiyu's car door. Who says I won't meet someone better if I leave Callum? In life, it is never too late to start. A month later, I heard that Callum's company shares had plummeted. The reason was that Freya compiled everything about her and Callum into a PPT and posted it online. Callum was still recuperating in the hospital. Someone took advantage of the opportunity to acquire the company. As for Freya, she returned to the welfare home where she worked. I didn't care too much about what happened next, because I'm getting married. Jiyu Shiyu knelt on one knee in front of everyone at the Sunset restaurant. Jiao Jiao, will you marry me? I threw myself into his arms and said word by word, I do. This restaurant, which I have visited many times, finally witnessed my happiness. A week later, Jiyu Shiyu and I held our wedding. The scene was so grand that it was reported in the news and was called the wedding of the century. In fact, the person who really wants to marry you can't wait even a moment.